when they whip the tar out of everybody in their particular division because they're qualified to be in the Olympics. They're great, and then they just go ahead and beat all the women. Then you're going to find some social ramifications you weren't expecting.
Free Talk Live.
Apparently in the news, there's something about the Olympics and transgenders rule change. I'm not
Athletes,
sure.
Yeah.
I can't find it. Apparently, Richie Rich, you saw some kind of headline about this.
I saw the headline, but the article wasn't very. There wasn't much depth to the article. So
supposedly the Olympic Committee is now going to allow athletes
transgendered athletes to compete as female.
Right.
If that's what they're transitioning to.
And it's not that anyone gives a flip about a transgendered athlete choosing to compete as a male. It's always as a female. And to me, that's, I'm an athlete, right? And I understand that if I decided to, these are, by the way, the article that I saw, pre-op trans athletes. These aren't even people that have had the motivation and the interest to go through an operation to change their genitals into whatever it is that they identify as. And so, first off, not a high level of commitment as far as I'm concerned. People that chop off their junk, committed. People who don't, not terribly committed. Is the way I see it.
On the way.
Fine, whatever. They may be taking some drugs, but you can always take the drugs and go back, right?
Estrogen hormones and
I'm not here to besmirch anyone's lifestyle.
Okay.
You want to wear a dress? Wear a dress. You want to cut off your junk? Cut off your junk. Do whatever you want to do. You want to compete in an athletic event? I don't care if it's even the Olympics. You need to, be committed. Now, in my not committed into a committed to the
transition.
Yeah. But I'm not even going to take that position. I think the solution to all of this is there's two leagues as it were. There is now, right? There's men's and women's.
Sure.
Well, let's change them. Let's change them to women's, or as I like to call it, double X. You take a genetic test. Believe me, to compete in the Olympics, you need to take tests. And a genetic test is relatively easy to complete. Genetic test, if your chromosomal makeup comes back as 2 X's, that's why I call it double X. If it comes back as 2 X's, you can compete in the double X league. If it doesn't, you're in what I like to call open. Now, it's not open doesn't mean that somebody who is not a man or doesn't identify as a man, I don't care. But if you're going to identify on that particular day as a woman and go in and kick all the gals' butts in jiu-jitsu, I think you need to have a genetic test. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, so there's an article that sort of proclaims, and it's the story that you handed me here, Richie Rich, was from looks like G. Edward Griffin's website, and then he links to some other site, which then links to an article from the Daily Mail from 2016, saying the headline: "Transgender athletes to be allowed to compete as the other sex in the Olympics without having gender reassignment surgery." But then the first bullet point under that says that they've received proposed guidelines. And so I'm not sure if a proposed guideline is the same thing as
a new
something
guideline
that's actually happening. Here's an article from The Guardian. This is also from January of 2016. Headline: IOC rules transgender athletes can take part in Olympics without surgery. Female to male athletes can compete without restriction, while male to female athletes must undergo hormone therapy, according to the new guidelines. So it sounds like something was implemented. Transgender athletes should be allowed to compete in the Olympics and other international events without undergoing sex reassignment surgery, according to the guidelines adopted by the International Olympic Committee. Their medical officials said they've changed the policy to adapt to current scientific, social, and legal attitudes on transgender issues. The guidelines are designed as recommendations, not rules or regulations, for international sports federations and other bodies to follow and should apply for this year's or then that year's Olympics in Rio de Janeiro.
Okay. I mean, again, I look forward to the day when we have a full crew of trans women doing, the pirouettes and the dancing ballet stuff. That should be a lot of fun. Not fully operated on, just
the rhythmic gymnastics,
right? and displaying all the hair that that God gave them. That'll be a lot of fun. No, I still say that we need to have a division that's solely for people born with two X chromosomes. And that would be more fair. People born with other sets of chromosomes, all you with it, whatever the makeup is, XY, two X's and a Y, whatever,
XXY,
whatever it might be, you're off in the open category.
See, and my proposal was similar to yours, only that I would have a third open category.
So men's, women's, and open?
Sure, because one of the complaints that you're going to get from the trans athlete competing against the men is that as a trans athlete, they are at a disadvantage when competing with genetic males because they're taking the hormones and all of those other, substances that don't let them compete at that level.
Just a guess, I would think that that there would be very few people in this category, right? I mean, it's hard enough to get the Jamaican bobsled team there at the Olympics, and then there's the men's, the women's, and now the open category. And so it would make basically anybody who's trans, they give them the opportunity to go ahead and win a gold medal. You know,
but they're already doing that in other sports, right? Like you mentioned jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
There's been stories of wrestlers, trans wrestlers winning their competitions.
Yep. There's a story out of Texas, I think, that one tends to make the rounds. This is the pivot point issue on this, and it's not that I have any problem with trans people. I don't. Do what you want, but. When you're talking about an athletic competition, most people are going to agree there's a difference between men and women. And
I would hope so.
Yeah, most people will.
Anyone sane would know that women have less upper body strength on average than men do.
Right, and I'm relatively sure.
Just sit them by a pull-up bar and see how they do.
That if I decided to compete in, women's jiu-jitsu, I identify as a woman today. I'm tired of losing in the men's division. I'll go ahead and go into the women's. That I'm probably going to take.
Now, didn't you get pinned by a girl at your jiu-jitsu class?
Oh yeah, but she's a purple belt.
Okay.
I mean,
so it isn't all about upper body strength, right? It's about technique.
No, yes. Paige is a very, very effective athlete, but she's also had a lot more training than I have, and I wouldn't compete against her anyway because she has a higher belt. I guess if we were in unlimited, because of her belt, we would never compete, even if it was an unlimited in women's. I don't know if there is an unlimited in women's.
But if there was an open category, then in theory you guys could face off.
I guess if she decided to, compete in that particular day. And I do believe that women, by the way, should be able to compete in the open category that I've suggested.
Sure.
If that's what they want to do. But that they only two X chromosomes to compete in the women's category is what I would say.
Under the previous guidelines of the Olympics approved in 2003, athletes who transition from male to female or vice versa were required to have reassignment surgery followed by at least 2 years of hormone therapy in order to be eligible to compete. Now, surgery will no longer be required, with female to male transgender athletes eligible to take part in men's competitions, quote, without restriction. Unquote. Meanwhile, male to female transgender athletes will need to demonstrate their testosterone level has been below a certain cutoff point for at least 1 year before their first competition. As we continue here with a confusing story about the International Olympic Commission coming up with what are both in the same article by The Guardian, which is sort of a noteworthy and renowned news source. It kind of like vacillates back and forth here between claiming these are rules, but not rules at the same time. The rule change being that in 2016, that the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, made some sort of a statement and ostensibly changed their rules, but then again, when you actually talk to one of the people who's involved, they say, quote, "This is a scientific consensus paper, not a rule or regulation. It is the advice of the Medical and Scientific Commission and what we consider the best advice." So
that sounds like a bunch of politics for a rule change to me.
Yeah. I don't know.
We just follow the best advice given to us by scientists, and the scientists have changed the best advice that they've given to us.
The experts agree.
Right. Whatever.
Yeah, quote, "It's necessary to ensure, insofar as possible, that trans athletes are not excluded from the opportunity to participate in sporting competitions," said the IOC in their document posted on their website that outlines the guidelines. Quote, "The overriding sporting objective is and remains the guarantee of fair competition."
Well, with our whole next generation coming down the pike with, 37 different genders, well, I think they had to make some kind of changes. That's the generation that's going to be competing in the Olympics, after all.
They should start their own Olympics.
Quote, "To require
Trans Olympics.
To require surgical anatomical changes as a precondition to participation is not necessary to preserve fair competition, and it may be inconsistent with developing legislation and notions of human rights," the group added. According to the story at The Guardian, former IOC Medical Commission Chairman Arne Lundqvist, who was among the experts involved in drafting the new guidelines, said the consensus was driven by social and political changes. Quote, "It's become much more of a social issue than in the past. We had to review and look into this from a new angle. We needed to adapt to the modern legislation around the world, and we felt we cannot impose a surgery if that's no longer a legal requirement."
Yeah, I would say that wait until you find out the social ramifications of a trans athlete, specifically a formerly male, now identifying as female athlete, when they whip the tar out of everybody in their particular division because they're qualified to be in the Olympics. They're great, and then they just go ahead and beat all the women. Then you're going to find some social ramifications you weren't expecting.
Under the new rules, an athlete transitioning to a woman must undergo hormone therapy and demonstrate that the total level of male testosterone in the blood has been below 10 nanomoles per liter for at least a year prior to competing. Now, I don't understand why that matters, because is that going to change their upper body strength?
It will affect it, but if they have already built that upper body strength beforehand, it depends on the age of the athlete and what they're competing in.
There are so many performance enhancing drugs out there that when you try to decide whether or not one or two have a particularly detrimental or impactful impact, for lack of a better term, on an athlete, it gets way too complicated, right? You have to draw the line somewhere and say this substance isn't allowed, no matter the quantity of it.
And don't forget that what was the guy that got in trouble for the bicycling doping thing?
Lance Armstrong.
Lance Armstrong. He got in trouble for what they call blood doping. This wasn't even injecting hormones or anything like that. It's just like more red blood cells or something to that effect. I'm not a scientist. You should read up on this and not just listen to what I say. But look at Michael Phelps. This guy sleeps in some kind of bariatric chamber in order to, I don't know what his coach wants it to do, but somehow enhance his performance. He sleeps in a special room.
Probably to keep himself more oxygenated.
Yeah, a special capsule. Now, these are people that spend a lot of time and a lot of energy in making themselves better at what they do. You telling me, as a weightlifter who knows that he would never win in the men's side, couldn't decide, well, I want to win in the women's side, so builds their upper body strength, and then for 1 year, diminishes their testosterone underneath the level. It's going to walk in there and mop the floor with those gals.
Are you questioning the integrity of these athletes?
Well, I'm just saying that they're going to try very hard to win. That's the whole purpose of the Olympics. When you write stuff down as rules, people are going to go right up to that rule, and they're going to ride that line as best they can. And in some cases, in some events, this is just an incredible advantage that's given to a trans athlete. And ladies and gentlemen, this is just a prediction. I expect the world is not quite ready for some dude who pulls his hair into pigtails and built like a bodybuilder and going in there and beating all the girls and just, hey, the world cheers for this incredible athlete. No, the world's going to say this is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And this is the final nail in the coffin, in my opinion. Could be potentially the final nail in the coffin of the Olympics. An organization
Who watches
that just goes.
Who watches the Olympics?
Right, that's the thing. Is it just goes and impoverishes nations now? It's just a
build the buildings.
It's a city destroying organization.
Let's go to Vernon. He's in New Orleans. Vernon, you're on Free Talk Live, listening online. Go ahead.
So back to the earlier in the show, you were talking about how transgender athletes were trying to accommodate those athletes so that they could participate and I guess make it fair
in the Olympics.
And for some reason, this discussion seemed to click something in my brain to where you all may actually have a problem with this, and I guess I didn't catch the end of the discussion as far as what do you all recommend as a solution? Because to me, with pretty much every topic you all ever talk about, it's like whatever you want to do goes. However you want to live goes. Fork Fest, everything is A-okay as long as it doesn't interfere with me. So For some reason, the stance that I was hearing tonight may go against that principle, and so I just wanted clarification on that.
Oh, well, just because you think everybody should be able to do whatever it is they want so long as they don't harm anybody else doesn't mean you can't have an opinion about them doing the things that they want to do. It doesn't mean that, we can't have an opinion about what the Olympic rules are. It's their organization. They can do whatever they want. I don't watch the Olympics, but it doesn't have anything to do with their positions on transgender. I just find it boring.
Yeah, I think that an organization that is non-governmental should be able to have whatever rules that organization wants. If you want my opinion on how organizations generally, athletic organizations, should handle this, is I think they should have two divisions. They should have either one division that we either call women's or what I like to call XX. Because they should have to take a genetic test, and if they come out with 2 X chromosomes, they may participate in that particular division. If they do not have 2 X chromosomes, they then participate in the other division, which I will call open. At which point, you cannot dispute that everybody doesn't get an opportunity to participate as an athlete. The fact is that not all men are equal when it comes to athletics. I was born just simply not as athletic as your average guy, and I was never going to be in the Olympics. So the fact that somebody might have been born with 2 X and a Y chromosome or whatever doesn't mean that they are disadvantaged, because athletics is all about advantages and disadvantages from a genetic level and hard work.
Yeah, and I kind of second their position.
Just simply allowing them to not participate in the sex they identify with, which of course I agree with you would give them
no, not the sex they identify with. No. This is genetics. It's a genetic-based division. If you can supply...
I'm saying you disagree with them participating with the sex they identify with, correct?
Yes. I only say that there should be 2 divisions, and one division should be for people who can produce 2 X chromosomes and only 2 X chromosomes, and the other division is for people who produce a different chromosomal variant.
Richie, it sounded like you wanted to share.
Oh, I was agreeing with him. Yes, unlike Mark's solution, I proposed like the third division solution, which is genetically male, genetically female, and other, to keep the playing field as level as possible for all male participants, all female participants, and then those who self-identify as something other than one of those two.
So should there be some sort of an enforcement mechanism if the person is caught, I don't even know how you could fake that kind of a test, but let's just pretend you could. And so you had someone that identified as a female that originally was a male, and they participate, and then they got caught later doing that. Should there be some sort of an enforcement mechanism to punish them?
Yeah, that would be you don't get to be in the Olympics.
Yeah, or you
take
get
your gold medal.
DQ'd, and the silver medalist gets the gold medal.
Yeah, they take
so they should strip them of their medal.
Of course they could.
Yeah.
They've stripped a lot of people, including Jim Thorpe, the world's greatest athlete ever. They took his medals from him for simply playing baseball.
Really?
So, yeah. I mean,
So to tie our discussion to a larger conversation, as long as it has to do with a private entity, you don't seem to have a problem with it. But when it comes to a government entity making these type of decisions, there is a problem. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, because a government entity demands that you pay it. Whereas the private entity does not demand that you participate in it. You can be an athlete without participating in the Olympics, if that's what you choose to do.
But you might be paying for the Olympics through your cable bill, or if you have cable, of course, or your internet bill. I mean, a portion of that may go to that indirectly. And so,
well, I'm sure that's true.
Let's just pretend if there was some sort of indirect contribution to this private organization, would you then feel as though you have more of a right to say what they do?
As a cable customer, I would feel like I have the right to stop having cable. But, you know, I mean, the Olympics, I would agree with you. The Olympics is pervasive, but I still think they have a right to, make up their rules. Whereas the government, on the other hand, is just an organization of force. And that's an entirely different situation. You can't opt out of the government.
Yeah, you can armchair quarterback anything you want.
Mark,
you know?
I'm so glad you're back. You bring balance to this show. Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the call tonight, Vernon. I think we all are kind of in agreement on this.
I know, but
issue.
I have a unique ability on this show, Ian, to explain these ideas to people who are somewhat reticent and a little stiff-necked about them. Mm-hmm. You, on the other hand, are like, screw you and the government and all, and the horses you all rode in on, right? Like that's what your shtick is, and that's how you do it. And From my standpoint, that's not how I see it. I see these as organizations, and I think Vernon brings up a really interesting point that some organizations are really pervasive, but ultimately, you don't have to watch the Olympics, you don't have to use Facebook, you don't have to use Google.
Free Talk Live. Listen live 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern, or grab the podcast. It's all at freetalklive.com.